In a small, seemingly perfect suburban neighborhood, the Johnson family had everything anyone could ask for. Mark was a successful business owner, a man admired by his community. Rachel, his devoted wife, kept their home running smoothly, ensuring their two children, Olivia and Ethan, had everything they needed. To the outside world, they were the model family, the family everyone looked up to. But beneath the surface, their once perfect world was slowly crumbling. As the months passed, Mark's business, once thriving, had begun to face financial struggles. The pressures of maintaining the perfect family image began to weigh heavily on him, and the cracks started to show. Rachel, ever the devoted wife, couldn't help but notice the distance growing between her and Mark. The late nights, the unspoken words, the tension that lingered in the air. She knew something was wrong, but it wasn't until she uncovered the truth that the full extent of their unraveling lives became clear. One evening, Rachel found a text message on Mark's phone, a message that confirmed her worst fears. Mark had been having an affair for months. Her world collapsed in that moment. The love of her life had betrayed her, and the reality of their crumbling marriage hit her like a ton of bricks. The anger, the betrayal, the heartbreak, it all came pouring out when she confronted him. "How could you do this to me, Mark?" she asked, holding the phone in her shaking hands. Mark stood there, guilt and frustration written all over his face. "You don't understand," he snapped. "You never understood the pressure I've been under. This isn't just about the affair, Rachel. It's everything." His voice was sharp, his anger barely contained. She had been trying to keep their family together, trying to keep it all from falling apart. But now, in this moment, she realized that no amount of effort could fix what had already been broken. "You've been lying to me for months, Mark. How could I ever trust you again?" she whispered, the tears welling up in her eyes. The argument escalated quickly, and what had started as an emotional confrontation turned into something much darker. The weight of everything Mark had been hiding, the affair, the financial problems, his own inner turmoil, boiled over. His frustration with himself and with Rachel grew, and in a sudden, terrifying outburst, Mark lashed out. "You think you have it all figured out? You think you've been perfect? You've done nothing but nag me for months," he shouted. Rachel, stunned and hurt, tried to back away, but the force of his anger was overwhelming. In a blur of motion, Mark grabbed her, shoving her to the ground, his hands around her neck. The violence was sudden, a terrifying eruption of the rage that had been festering within him for far too long. Rachel gasped for air, struggling to break free, but it was too late. She fought, she screamed, but her cries were drowned out by the sound of Mark's fury. Upstairs, Olivia and Ethan heard the chaos. They had been asleep, but the screams from downstairs pulled them from their rooms, confused and frightened. "Mom! Dad!" Ethan called out, his small voice trembling. But when they reached the bottom of the stairs, what they saw would stay with them forever. Olivia, barely a teenager, stood frozen in horror as she saw her mother lying motionless on the floor. Mark was standing over her, his face twisted in anger. And when he saw his children standing there, wide-eyed and terrified, he snapped. "Get out of here!" he screamed at them, but his words only fueled their fear. Olivia rushed to Ethan, trying to shield him from the horror unfolding before them. But in a haze of rage and madness, Mark turned on them next. His children, his flesh and blood, were now in the way. "You think you can stop me?" he roared, his hands trembling with fury. In that moment, Mark was no longer the man who had once loved his family. He was a stranger, consumed by violence. He grabbed Olivia first, his hands tightening around her neck. Ethan screamed, desperate, but he was no match for his father's strength. As Olivia's eyes fluttered closed, Ethan tried to fight back, hitting his father, but Mark was unstoppable. The violence continued, each second more horrific than the last, until the house that had once been full of love and laughter became a silent tomb. By the time the police arrived, it was too late. The officers who walked through the door found a house torn apart by violence. There was no one left to save. Mark was dead, having taken his own life in the aftermath of the massacre, unable to face the consequences of what he had done. The community that had once admired the Johnsons for their perfect family was left in shock, unable to comprehend how such a thing could happen in their own backyard. Neighbors spoke of the family with sorrow, but no one had seen the signs. No one had known the depths of Mark's anger, his guilt, and his secrets. The police found Mark's journal in the study, the pages filled with dark confessions, his thoughts spilled out onto paper. The journal revealed the unraveling of a man who had once been full of dreams but was now consumed by darkness. The affair had been the final straw, but it was clear that his anger had been building for years. The tension between him and Rachel, the lies, the mounting debts, the weight of a life he felt he could no longer control, it all came crashing down on that fateful night. "I didn't mean for it to happen," Mark had written, "but I couldn't stop myself. I thought I could hold it together, but I couldn't." The final pages of the journal, written in a trembling hand, were a chilling admission of guilt, but they offered no explanation, no reason for the madness that had taken over him. His words, though painful, could not undo the destruction he had caused. And now, as the family home sat empty, marked for sale, the reality of what had transpired hit hard. The town was left to pick up the pieces, but they were pieces that would never fully fit together again. The tragedy was too great, the damage too deep. As people gathered in the wake of the massacre, they asked themselves the same question. How could something like this happen? How could the perfect family, the family everyone admired, be torn apart by something so senseless? The answer, though painful, was clear. The perfect life is often a facade, and sometimes behind that perfect image, darkness is lurking, waiting for the right moment to emerge. The Johnsons' story became a tragic reminder that no family is beyond destruction, no matter how perfect they seem on the outside. And in the quiet aftermath, the people of the town were left with the haunting truth. The perfect family can hide the most horrifying secrets, and sometimes those secrets are the very things that lead to their undoing. No one will ever truly understand what pushed Mark to such a violent, senseless act. But one thing is certain, the truth can be more terrifying than we could ever imagine. And sometimes it's the ones closest to us who harbor the darkest secrets. The perfect family is often a lie, and that lie can cost them everything.